Today, we're gonna burn some pasta. Okay, before you get mad and leave, hear me out. First off, this burnt pasta dish is a real thing in Italy. A really unique knock your socks off dish with a cult-like following. It's a must try for any pasta lover. Second, crispy, borderline burnt starchy things are some of the tastiest foods in the world. Think about the soccherat on paella, the charred edges on lasagna, torso bibimbap, bien cuit, the French art of baking bread until the crust is well done and dark, extra dark pretzels. I could go on. This is gonna be a good one. Oh, and did I mention there's gonna be a murder? The dish is called spaghetti all'assassina, which translates to assassins or killers spaghetti. What a name. The spaghetti is saturated in a spicy, concentrated tomato sauce that clings to the noodles, which then crisp and char in the tomatoey, garlicky oil so that the texture of any given strand ranges from soft to al dente to crisp. It's unlike any other pasta I've ever tried. Assassina has one of those classic happy accident backstories. It begins in the 1960s at a restaurant called Al Sorso Preferito in the seaside town of Bari along the Adriatic Sea. Cooks at the restaurant supposedly burnt a batch of spaghetti in spicy tomato sauce. Instead of throwing it out, they tried it. And they loved the charred, crunchy bits so much that they actually put it on the menu. Now it's the darling of not only that restaurant, but the entire town. What's fun about the dish is that it breaks just about every rule of pasta cookery in the Italian canon. Let's review some of those rules. For a typical red sauce pasta, you would boil the pasta in lots of salty water, simmer the sauce for hours to develop complex flavor, finish the pasta in the sauce for a minute or two, thin the sauce as needed with pasta cooking water, and finally, make sure that every bite of pasta is perfectly al dente. Our assassina murders those rules. You know what? That's actually 5 murders. That's like kind of a lot of murders. All right, let's go to the kitchen. First up, don't worry about taking notes or anything because the recipe and step-by-step video are available through our gorgeous 5-star America's Test Kitchen app. There's also a link to the recipe below this video. Things are gonna start off in a pretty familiar way. I'm sauteing a couple cloves of minced garlic and some red pepper flakes in plenty of olive oil until the garlic is golden brown. Then I'm gonna turn it into a simple tomato sauce by adding a cup of tomato passata and a little salt. A quick side note about passata, which I also mentioned in my episode about pasta alla vodka. This is Italy's uncooked, strained tomato puree, and it's exactly what you want when you're going for bright tomato flavor and a silky smooth texture. It's usually sold in jars, sometimes called strained tomatoes, and most supermarkets carry it along with other tomato products now. If you can't find it, tomato puree will give you a similar texture, but a more cooked flavor. I'm gonna let the sauce simmer for a few minutes over medium heat until it thickens and starts to sizzle around the edges like this. And now I'm gonna drop 12 ounces of uncooked spaghetti right into the skillet. Whoa, what? Yeah, here's where we start throwing those rules out the window. I'm spreading out the pasta into an even layer, raising the heat to medium high, and then pouring in 1 cup of this brothy tomato liquid. I made this by whisking together water, tomato paste, and a little sugar. Now I'm gonna simmer this for a few minutes until the broth has been mostly absorbed by the pasta. While it's cooking, I prod the spaghetti strands with a spatula so that the liquid runs between them and prevents them from sticking together. By the time the liquid is gone, it should start to sizzle around the edges of the skillet. Then I'm just gonna do the process all over again. Another cup of broth goes into the pan, followed by another few minutes of simmering and sizzling. What I really love is that at this point in the recipe, it kind of feels like it's not going to work. It requires faith and patience. All right, so we're not done cooking yet, but let's pause for a quick show of hands. Does this repeated absorption method seem familiar to anyone? Anyone? Bueller? All right, if you're nodding and yelling, yes, risotto, then you're absolutely right. Italians call this pasta risottata, which means to cook pasta in the manner of risotto. And the term poco a poco translates to little by little, and that refers to the gradual, repeated additions of cooking liquid. The point is that the mechanics here are the same as when you're cooking rice in risotto. The flavorful liquid hydrates and deeply seasons the noodles, while agitating the noodles releases starch. The big difference between risotto and assassina is that in risotto, you use the starch to build creamy body, but for assassina, we're gonna burn it. So yeah, it's pretty different, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now I'm gonna flip the pasta like I would a delicate fish fillet using a couple of thin spatulas. Now the industry term for these things is in fact fish spatula, and I feel like I use them for everything. Anyone else? Yeah, if you know, you know. Okay, back to the pasta flipping. I'm gonna turn 1/2 at a time and then spread the noodles out so they continue to cook evenly. Then comes 2 more rounds of adding tomato broth, letting the noodles absorb the liquid and sizzle, followed by 1 more flip for the pasta. Okay, so at this point, the pasta is mostly cooked through, but it's still firm. We get a little bit of browning here and there. What we've done is reduce the sauce to concentrate its flavor, and we've trapped all of that starch from the pasta in the sauce. And that sets us up for the big dramatic finale. Fair warning, things are gonna get a little bit messy, but well, they don't call it killer pasta for nothing. And trust me, the payoff is huge. The key here is to crank the heat to high and let the spaghetti sizzle without touching it beyond giving the skillet maybe a swirl or two for about 3 to 5 minutes. Here's where I use my ears and nose to measure progress. The sound of the sizzling will get more intense, and when the sauce and pasta start to char, you pick up on it right away with your nose. All of that starchy, sugary sauce fries in the flavorful oil and develops incredible depth of flavor from both Maillard browning and caramelization. We are talking complexity on par with searing a steak, griddling pancakes until they're golden brown, and baking bread until the crust turns rich and dark. And then there's the next level flavor brought on by charring, which is caused by an entirely different set of reactions called pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is rooted in the Greek words for fire and to break or release, and refers to the decomposition brought on by high temperatures, in essence, burning. When proteins and sugars are heated above about 350 degrees, the compounds that they form during Maillardization and caramelization break down even further into smaller molecules that taste deeply roasty, tarry, smoky, and a little bit bitter. Those flavors would be overwhelming on their own, but in moderation, they taste great and they add balance. If you want to learn more about that, check out my episode on why you should burn your food just a little bit. The other big point of complexity here is texture. In any given strand of the spaghetti, you can get a range from soft chew to crispy char. That makes the dish so intriguing. Every bite is totally different. Okay, just check out what I have here. This is no ordinary bowl of pasta. It's this incredibly dynamic tangle of umami-rich, flavor-saturated spaghetti that's crispy and chewy and charred all at once. How's it taste? Ooh, that is so good. It's like nothing else, and yet it's so instantly familiar and comforting. It's so good. I gotta get back to eating. Now you can get this full recipe in the America's Test Kitchen app or at the link below this video. And you're definitely gonna wanna make it because this is absolutely how to eat spicy, tomatoey, chewy, crispy, totally killer spaghetti all'assassina.